Now friends, let us start with a whole new topic, TDS or TCS. Friends, this is a very simple topic, and there are few things that you will have to remember in this particular chapter always, and thereafter this particular chapter will become very simple. See what is the objective and what is the intention of this particular chapter. Very basic introduction. Understand that particular point first. Okay, say for example Mr. X makes certain payments to Mr. Y, and Mr. X supposing has to pay 100 rupees. Okay, all illustrative things. Supposing Mr. X has to pay to Mr. Y 100 rupees. Okay, for a transaction, say for example transaction T1. Okay, and supposing if this particular chapter is applicable, that means if the TDS provisions are applicable, then the law will say, and the law will make the provision that out of this money, some amount has to be deducted. Supposing 5 rupees has to be deducted. Normally, by and large, all the sections will say X percentage has to be deducted. Okay. So, this much amount you have to deduct it. Okay. And you have to pay to that gentleman only 95 rupees. Okay. Actually, you had to pay him 100 rupees. But now you will pay him only 95 rupees. So, where will the 5 rupees go? These 5 rupees will go to the pocket of the government. Okay, this will go to the pocket of the government. Okay, and this gentleman Mr. Y will get a credit. This gentleman will get a credit for this particular money. So basically Mr. Y will get full 100 only. Not even a single rupee he has to lose. Okay, but he will get a credit on account of his taxes. Okay, from the government, whatever the tax has already been deducted. Very simple as that. Okay, and apart from that, then there is a procedural aspect that you have to do certain compliances, file the return. There will be e-statements, and you will have to give TDS certificate, so that all the proper documentation etc. will be done. Okay, that means it will not be a case that you will just lose the money just like that. Okay, so you will get 95, but you will plus get the whatever the tax is deducted, that you will get as credit. Okay, now what you have to remember in this particular chapter very precisely, that what are the types of transactions that are covered here. I repeat, what are the types of transactions which are covered by this particular chapter that you have to study properly. In other words, the tax has to be deducted only if, I repeat, the tax has to be deducted only if, I repeat, it is a specified transaction. Okay, if it is not a specified transaction, then tax need not be deducted. Okay. Second point, with respect to every transaction, there will be some basic limit. And this is very general thing I'm telling you. Somewhere some exceptions also will be there. Somewhere there will be no limit also. But with respect to every transaction, there will be a basic limit. Okay. Now, for example, the law says that supposing you have to deduct the tax only if the amount cross 10,000 rupees. Say for example. Okay. So, supposing if a transaction is only 100 rupees, then you will not deduct the tax. Okay. So, in the given case, I am paying only 100 rupees. My limit is 10,000 rupees. So, there is no need for me to do this particular compliance. In that case, I will pay full 100 rupees. Is that very much clear? Okay. However, supposing if I am paying 11,000 rupees, okay, in that particular case, I will have to deduct tax. Or supposing if it is 5%, I have to deduct the tax on the entire amount of 550 rupees. Keep that in mind. This is hardcore basics. Somewhere some exception will be there. I repeat, wherever the basic limits are provided, if the transaction is below that particular limit, then you will not deduct the tax at source. Very general thing I'm telling you. Okay. But if the amount cross that particular limit, which is provided by the respective section, in that particular case, you have to deduct the tax on the entire amount. I repeat, on the entire amount of the payment, that is entire amount of the transaction. And on that, you have to deduct the tax at source and do the compliance of this particular chapter. The next small little point that you have to remember, that who are the types of payers? Who are the types of payers that is covered by this chapter, and who are the types of the payees that are covered by this particular chapter? So in majority of the situation, it will be specified that the payer being this, making the payment, and the payee being this, receiving the payment. These kind of situations will be created in almost every section. But somewhere some ifs and buts will be there. So that you have to know in the respective section. So basic things that you have to know. Most important thing is what are the transaction types. Then second point is what is the limit with respect to the transaction types. Okay. And 3, what are the types of payers who are subjected to this particular provisions with respect to the payments to the specified payees. That means the specified transaction where the payer payee should match as per the conditions of the law. One simple example I am telling you. Supposing if the payee is a government. Okay. Supposing, that means if I am making some payment to the government, then the law will say that tax is not to be deducted. I am making payment to the government and I will deduct the tax of the government. I mean, this is so serious thing, right? So, there will be no TDS. Okay, something like that. So, payer pay condition has to be monitored properly with respect to each and every section. Now, friends, come to this particular question. Simple introductory question. Question 1. While making payment to a non-resident for providing technical services on a World Bank aided project, net of tax had deducted the tax as per the rate prescribed, but says that the payee is not entitled for the TDS certificate since the tax was not to be borne by the payee as per the agreement. Examine. Now, friends, this is a very conceptual question. Understand, I'll just give you one particular example. Okay. See, now that we already know that the payer pay, when there is any transaction, supposing if the gross payment is supposing 100, the TDS is, say for example 10, and my net payment is 90. Okay. This is how the transaction happens. And when it comes to the payee, that means the receiver of the money, he gets a credit on account of TDS when it comes to tax calculation. Okay. So now, supposing if there is a company X has to pay to Mr. A this particular money, okay, they can enter into a contract such that you will get a net payment of X amount. Okay, say for example, net payment is X amount. Okay, now what is this? This is a contractual terms. This is a contractual terms between the payer and the payee. Now, for example, if I'm employed by, say, for example, a company says that you forget about your TDS, you will get X amount. So you can take this much of money home. That's all. And that much money I will give you. X amount and fix. Now, TDS, PDS, income tax, you forget everything. Because anyway, TDS is not your responsibility. TDS is a payer's responsibility. So the payer will take care of everything. You take net payment and go home. This is a contractual term. I repeat, this is a contractual term between the payer and the payee. First of all, is this possible? That means, is this type of contracts a valid contract? Yeah, this kind of a contract is a valid contract. This kind of a contract is a valid contract. In other words, as per the Contract Act, you can enter into X amount of remuneration, which is net of everything. There can be a contract drafted like that. But when it comes to the income tax, I repeat, but when it comes to the income tax, see, you cannot ignore the TDS. See, you cannot ignore the TDS, that by entering into such a contract, now TDS compliances I will not do. You will have to do the TDS compliance. You will have to do the TDS compliances. But see, what will happen is, supposing if I assume that my net payment is 2,50,000. This is my net payment. So ultimately what I will have to do, I will have to gross it up for the income tax purposes. So for TDS compliance, the payer has to deduct the tax at source. It's not that the TDS, you can ignore it just by saying net of tax, I will not have to pay TDS to the government. Not like that. You will have to pay TDS, that is a tax portion, to the government. There is no doubt about that. But what you will have to do is to gross it up. Now you will have to do a grossing up. Okay. So assuming that, supposing TDS rate is 10. Okay, and the net payment is 90, and if your net payment in rupees terms is 2,50,000, so what you will do, 2,50,000 is your 90%, assuming that TDS is 10 and the net payment is 90. So in that case, how much will be the TDS portion? This is how you have to gross it up. Or if you want the gross amount, then you can do it like that, divided by 90, because 2,50,000 is a 90%. So what is the gross figure? Gross figure is 100. Depending on whatever the way you want it, you can do this particular grossing up and get the amount of the TDS. And whatever is the TDS portion, that of course you will have to pay to the government. That means 2,50,000 multiplied by 10 divided by 90, whatever the TDS comes, that you will have to pay to the government. Now come to the question directly. See, there is some person who is a non-resident for whom the payment is to be made. The tax has already been deducted. Now the payee, the payer says that the payee is not entitled to the TDS certificate. Why no? Because once the TDS compliance is done, TDS certificate has to be given. That means a TDS credit, that another person will definitely take that particular credit. There is no doubt about that. Okay. Since the tax was not to be borne by the payee as per the agreement. So if the tax is deducted, now this is a message. If the tax is deducted, the TDS certificate should be issued. Put it differently, the tax credit has to be passed on if the tax is deducted. I repeat, if the tax is deducted, certificate should be issued and the tax credit should be passed on to the respective person. You cannot ignore the TDS provisions just because you are making a net of tax payment. Okay, that is one of the first clarification. Okay, now the second point here, when it comes to the TDS rates, in fact now our answer is in fact already over. So answer is already over, but one more extra clarification I want to give you, because see here, no, that the person who is receiving the money is a non-resident. Okay, so that's the reason it just clicked into my mind. Okay, now when it comes to the TDS rates, keep that in mind. Okay, TDS rates. Now in many sections, 10%, 5%, 2%, like this, it will keep on coming. Okay, if there is any payment to a resident person, if supposing the tax rate is 10%, it is a fixed 10%. But if you are paying to a non-resident, then it has to be the appropriate percentage plus the applicable surcharge and plus the applicable cess. Keep that in mind. Okay, I repeat, if there is any payment to be made to a resident person, generally it is a percentage which is basically a percentage specified as a round figure. Like you don't have to do incremental working with respect to surcharge and the cess. Okay, but if it is a payment to, that means a receiver of the money, if is a non-resident, then applicable surcharge and the applicable cess has to be increased with the amount of the TDS rate. Okay, however, if the transaction is on account of salary payment, that means if the payer is paying salary, whether to resident or non-resident. Okay, so if the transaction is on account of salary, then always it is plus applicable surcharge and plus applicable cess. Okay, this thing you better remember in this particular situation. Okay, so TDS rate, in general it is percentage fixed. For non-resident, always applicable surcharge and cess has to be incremented, and if it is a salary transaction, the actual tax liability need to be calculated, and to that you have to add surcharge and the cess. Now in the given question is a non-resident. Okay, so it should be whatever is the rate plus the surcharge and the cess, applicable surcharge and the cess. Okay, and however in the given question they have not printed anything, so I'll just give you example with 10%. Okay, so that's all for this particular question. Now friends, come to the TDS with respect to the interest payments. Now, first of all, just keep this particular page open in front of you, section 194A. Okay, and where any payment of interest is made to the resident person, then this is the limit. Okay, in case if there is any bank interest or if there is any interest from post office, then the limit is 40,000 rupees. And if it is a senior citizen, then it is a 50,000 limit. However, if there is any other interest, then the limit is only 5,000 rupees. Okay, and interest will be subjected to the TDS at the rate of 10% in this particular situation. Now, if there is any bank interest, one extra point which I want to bring to your notice is that if there is a core banking system, I guess that you people already know core banking system. Some people also know it as centralized banking system. So, for example, HDFC Bank has got a centralized banking system. Okay, so in this particular case, if the bank has already adopted this core banking system, in that particular case, the interest with respect to the payee has to be considered. That means, say for example, you have a account in branch 1, branch 2 and branch 3. Okay. So one branch in Delhi, one branch in Ahmedabad, one branch in Mumbai. Okay. And you have three separate deposits with three separate branches. Okay. So you have to total, because after all, the payee is the same. Okay. So in this particular case, the law makes it very clear that with reference to the income credited or paid by a banking company to the payee. Okay. So with respect to the payment, you'll have to consider if it is more than one branch, then you have to aggregate it. And with that aggregate figure, you have to apply this particular limits. Okay. And accordingly, you have to consider the payment for the purpose of TDS. Okay. Now come to this particular question. Examine the TDS implication under 194A in case mentioned here under. Mr. Harish made a 6-month fixed deposit of rupees 10 lakhs, 9% per annum with ABC Cooperative Bank. So cooperative banks are covered. The fixed deposit matures on 31st of March. So he has made a 6 months a fixed deposit on 1st of October. So you can just start doing the calculation. So October, November, December, January, February. So it is 6 months only. Okay. So 10 lakhs into 9% into 6 by 12. Okay. Just check how much the amount comes. 45,000. Okay. So this is more than the limit. It is not given to us that this gentleman is a senior citizen, because for senior citizen a little bit higher limit is there. Okay. So that is not there. So this is 45,000 is above the limit. Then on the entire amount, you will have to deduct the tax under section 194A. Finish. So tax has to be deducted in this particular case. And of course that you can keep on updating your answer. And normally, see, I will suggest you to, because present the answer in a very systematic way. However, for classwork purpose, we will do it in the quick possible manner. Okay. However, see, in the, what should I say, answer purpose for your book, for your taking down of the answer. Okay. You always say like that, gross payment. Okay. Thereafter TDS, surcharge, cess. Okay. So this is a total TDS. Okay, and thereafter the net payment. This is how you should keep on showing. Okay, now in this particular case, surcharge will not be there, cess will not be there, because it's a payment to the resident person covered by 194A. Okay, so the gross payment will be 45,000. Then TDS you write under section this at the rate this, whatever. Then you write the TDS figure. Then you say surcharge not there, not there. Then you will write total TDS. Okay, and the net payment you will have to write. This much basic working you should show it in each and every answer as a matter of presentation of the answer. Okay, so I will also as far as possible answer it in this particular manner only when I do it in the formal way. Okay, next, on 1st of June, Ganesh made a 3 9-month fixed deposit. There is a 3 9-month deposit of 1 lakh each, carrying on interest with a Dwarka branch, Janakpuri branch and Rohini branch, 3 separate branch of a bank. Okay, and CBS, Central Core Banking System, or I also call it the Central Banking System, is already adopted. So they already have this CBS system. Okay, fixed deposit matures on 28th of February. Okay, so from 1st of June to February. Okay, just calculate the number of months. How much it comes? June, July, August, September, October, November, December, January, February. Matures on 20th February. So it is 9 months. Okay. So 1 lakh rupees into how much percentage? It is 9% for 9 months. So 9 by 12. Okay. This is one deposit. Okay. And this you have to multiply it with 3 because it is 3 deposits. So this is your total interest payment. Just check how much this particular figure comes. Okay. Now, if this particular figure crosses the limit, then you deduct the tax. Otherwise, you don't. Here, the main point here is that you have to adopt a core banking system for the purpose, because it already adopted core banking system. So you have to adopt the aggregate figure for the purpose of TDS. Now, this total figure is some 20,000 and odd figure. I think 20,250. Please check that this particular amount is less than the limit. So the TDS provision will not be applicable because of that particular limit. The third part of the answer, Okay. On 1st of April, Mr. Rajesh started 1 year recurring deposit. Now, this is a recurring deposit, 20,000 per month at the rate of 8% with PQR Bank. On 1st of April, you are doing, okay, and it matures on 31st of March. See, recurring deposit means the first month you will get interest for 12 months. The second month deposit, you will get interest only for 11 months. Okay. So, first month what you have deposited, you are going to get interest for 12 months. The second month you are going to make a deposit, and for that you are going to get interest for 11 months, like this. Okay, so 12 plus 11 plus 10 plus 9 plus 8 plus 7 plus 6 plus 5 plus 4 plus 3 plus 2 plus 1. Okay, this is total number of months, 78 number of months. Okay, this is 78 number of months for which you are going to get this particular interest. So you will calculate interest as 20,000 multiplied by how much it is, 8% per annum. Okay, so 8%, so multiplied by 1 by 12, that is going to be interest for 1 month, and multiplied by 78. This is going to be your total interest. Just multiply this particular figure and see how much the interest that you get. Okay, I think we are getting 10,400 rupees. Okay, which is less than the limit. Okay, and since it is less than the limit, you will not be subjected to any TDS provisions, because this is all recurring deposit with a bank, and that's the reason the limit with respect to the bank will be applicable. Okay, further, the next. Okay, let me erase this. Okay, a cooperative society A, annual turnover 85 crores, paid interest to another cooperative society B. Now, these particular provisions are newly introduced from assessment year 21-22 and onwards. Okay, and normally when a society makes a payment to a society, normally in the oldest system there was no TDS provisions, but now the TDS provisions will be applicable, subjected to the conditions. Okay, those conditions I will tell you. In the next situation, it is a cooperative society B being a agri society. Okay, the turnover is this particular figure in the preceding year, makes payment of interest on deposit to Mr. C. Okay, so in this particular situation also, subject to conditions, the TDS provisions will be applicable. So normally for cooperative societies, the specified cooperative society, this was primary agri society. Normally there was no TDS before, but now the TDS provision subject to conditions will be applicable. Okay, so mark this particular point as valuable. Okay, now see, where there is any cooperative society which is referred to in this clause and this clause, because there are a lot of minor provisions in this particular case. Okay, where under this particular clause and this particular clause, one particular clause, see, the primary agri society comes into picture in clause 7a. See, clause 7a, primary agri society comes into picture. Okay, and clause 5, where any transaction is between cooperative society to the any other cooperative society is there. So these are all specified transaction. Okay, where total receipts, gross receipt turnover of a cooperative society exceeds 50 crores. Okay, during the financial year immediately preceding the financial year. Okay, so if you are talking about TDS of the previous year, because tax is deducted in the previous year itself. Okay, so in the preceding year, if your turnover exceeds 5050 crore rupees, 5050 crore rupees, okay, in that particular case, you will have to deduct the tax on account of interest, and the limit is almost the same, like 40,000 and 50,000. 50,000 for the senior citizen with respect to any time deposits, in this particular society. Okay, so now if you directly come to this particular question, see, the turnover is already crossing 50 crores, so that basic condition, society to society transaction. Okay, and this is 65,000 rupees. Yes, so 65,000 rupees anyway crossing the limit of 40,000 rupees in this particular situation, and accordingly the TDS provisions will be applicable. And so society B is a agri society, but turnover is crossing the limit and amount is more than the limit. So, and this turnover is of the preceding financial year. See, this is a preceding financial year. So turnover is to only decide whether you are supposed to deduct the tax at source or not. So logically, the intention of the law is, like, what should I say, a bigger society, okay, with higher turnovers will be subjected to the compliances. Otherwise, there is a relaxation for the smaller cooperative societies where the TDS compliance will not be required to be carried out. Now, friends, come to this particular part, LIC payments. Friends, this particular LIC payments is basically a transaction on account of maturity of the LIC policies. Under this particular provisions, 194DA provisions, you will require little bit of extra attention because some good things that you will need to learn and how that calculation etc. is to be done. Okay, so in our simplified version of the notes, to keep this particular page open, 194DA, we are doing this particular provisions. Okay, and first of all, you understand this particular provisions, and thereafter I will take you. This is not that, that simple thing like if the transaction deduct the tax or not deduct. Majority of the section is like that only, but this is not like that. Okay, so first of all, you have to understand that 194DA provision makes it very clear where any sum is paid under the life insurance policy, okay, including the bonus if any on that particular policy, okay, other than the amounts which is not includable in the total income. Other than the amounts which is not includable. In other words, some of the LIC policy payments are exempt. They are exempt under section 10(10)(d). They are exempt under section 10(10)(d). Okay. For that, the TDS provisions are itself not applicable. So, if it is an exempt policy, then the TDS provisions per se itself is not applicable. Okay. Now, if the policy is not exempt, that means if that policy is not exempt means the payment amount of the policy is taxable. Okay. If the policy money is taxable, that means it is not exempt. In that particular case, the TDS provisions will come into picture. That is the first thing. So first thing you need to know, and you have to study section 10(10)(d), that what are the conditions for the exemption. Okay. So that will come into the play first of all. Then if the policy is taxable, then the TDS provisions are applicable. Okay. When the TDS provisions are applicable, there is a basic limit which is 100,000 rupees. That is 1 lakh rupees. That means if your payment, aggregate amounts of such payments, if it exceeds this particular limit of 1 lakh rupees, then only you have to deduct the tax. Otherwise, you have not to deduct the tax at source. And if the TDS is applicable, listen very carefully because this is another very important thing. Then the rate is 5%. That is okay. The rate is 5%. But the 5% is on the amount of the income comprised therein. This is very important. So it is not the 5% of the what should I say, the payment, the amount of the payment which is made by the LIC. That if X amount is paid, how much is the income portion in that particular policy? I understood that. So it is 5% of the income portion which you have to consider for the purpose of TDS. So here also that particular working has to be done. Okay. Now. And okay, so now first of all, let me tell you that section 10(10)(d) provisions. Okay, now 10(10)(d) provisions tells you that if the policies are taken, make a note of this very carefully. If the policies are taken on or after 1st of April 2003 to 31st of March 2012, okay. If the policy is before 1/4/2003, that means still the older policies, then they are all exempt. Okay. So if the policy is taken between, that means policy was issued between 2003 to 2012, okay, where the premium, okay, if it is less than 20% of the sum assured, okay, I repeat, where the premium payable for any of the year, if it exceeds 20%, then it will be taxable. Okay, that means if the premium is less than 20% of the sum assured, then it will not be taxable. Okay, and if there are any policies which is taken from 1/4/2012 and onwards, then the premium should be less than 10%. Okay, so if the premium is less than 10%, it is 10% of the sum assured. Okay, then it will be exempt, otherwise it will become taxable. So these you better keep it in your back memory. Okay, 2003 to 2012, 20% of the sum assured. That is a test for the purpose of exemption. And after 2012 till today, okay, it is 10% test. Okay, so first of all, you have to decide whether the policy is taxable or the policy is exempt. Okay, now see, Mr. X is a resident due to receive this amount on 31st of March towards maturity of the LIC policy taken on 1/4/2015. Now, since it is in 2015, it is after 2012. So, you have to check the test where the sum assured is 4 lakhs. Sum assured is 4 lakhs. And the premium is, annual premium is 1,25,000. Premium is 1,25,000 rupees. Okay. So, the premium is more than, okay, 10% of the sum assured. Okay, since the premium is more than 10% of the sum assured, okay, this particular figure will be chargeable to tax. Now, once you have decided that it will be chargeable to tax, then you have to deduct the tax at source. Okay, so this is my first conclusion, that it is taxable. Is that clear? Now, that is my first point. Okay, now the second point. So now the payment, okay, where such payment if it crosses 1 lakh rupees. So what is that particular payment? So you have to deduct the tax on the income portion. So you have to receive 14.5 lakhs. Okay, and how much premium total you have already paid so far? 1 second, maturity proceeds taken. Total premium paid up to the date is 7.5 lakhs. So minus 7.5 lakhs. So that means how much is the income portion? How much is the taxable income portion out of this particular sum? Okay. So this is the amount on which the tax has to be deducted. So this is 7 lakhs. Okay. Multiplied by the rate, that is 5%, and that is going to be your TDS portion. Okay. So this is a point where we have decided that the policy is taxable and the tax has to be deducted. That 1 lakh rupees limit also we have already crossed. Okay. The second part of the question. Mr. A resident receives 2.75 lakhs on 31/3 LIC policy taken on 31/3/2012. So since it is 31/3/2012, the test will be 20% of the sum assured, of which sum assured is 2.5 lakhs. So 20% of 2.5 lakhs. Okay, that is a test. Annual premium is 35,000. Annual premium is 35,000 rupees. Okay, is annual premium more than 20%? No, the annual premium is not more than, so it is within the limit of 20%. Okay, so in that particular case, the policy itself is exempt. Okay, now since the policy itself is exempt, there is no question of any TDS coming into picture because it is covered by section 1010D. So second part of the answer is also over. No TDS required. Okay. Point number 3. Mr. Z is a resident, is due to receive 95,000 on 1/10 towards the maturity of the LIC policy taken on 1/10/2012, for which sum assured is 90,000 and the premium is 15,000. Okay. Now policy was taken on 1/10/2012. Okay. Now since it is taken on 1/10/2012, the sum assured test will become 10%. But if I want to give the answer in the very shortcut manner, see, this payment is only 95,000. Okay, so it is anyway not crossing my basic threshold of 1 lakh of rupees. So no need to test only. Straight away you can say that no TDS provision will be applicable. But still, even if you want to test, the sum assured is 90,000 multiplied by 10% because it is on 1/10/2012. So 9,000. Okay, now your annual premium is more than 9,000. That's the reason the policy is a taxable policy. This is a taxable policy. Okay. However, this payment is only 95,000. So it is less than the threshold limit. So there is not going to be any TDS in this particular situation. Now friends, come to this particular discussion with respect to the work contract. Work contract is a very, very popular real life transaction. And first of all, let me explain this particular provision very, very carefully. Just come to this particular page. See, first of all, there is one special feature of this particular section, the limit. Okay, the basic limit. It is 30,000 rupees per contract or 1 lakh rupees per annum. Okay, whichever limit you cross. For example, if you have a multiple contracts with the same to same contractor, then you have to see whether every contract value is crossing this 30,000 limit or 1 lakh rupees per annum limit. Okay, moment either of the limit has been breached, only then this particular TDS provisions will be applicable. Second point, the rate is if the pay is individual or an HUF 1%, otherwise it is 2%. So to whom are you making the payment? Accordingly, the TDS rate has to be decided in this particular situation. Okay. Further, if there is any payments which is for the personal purpose, okay, if there is any payment for the personal purpose, then there is no question of any TDS ever coming into picture. I repeat, where any payment which is for the personal purpose. Now, for example, if I enter into a contract and that contract is my personal purpose contract, in that particular case, I will not have to do any TDS compliances. Okay, so these are the hardcore basic point that you will have to remember in this particular question. Okay, and there are some more extra point that also I will tell you, but one second. Before that, let us go to this particular question and we can easily manage this. Okay, see, everywhere TDS is very pretty simple. Once you know the transaction, payer pay, basic amount, that's all, and rate. So these few things you just remember, you have to keep on giving the answer. Now X Limited makes payment to Y Limited towards work done under a different contract. So it is already printed, different contracts. So this different contracts is one of the very essential feature of real life situation. Okay, so it is said that all these contracts are different contracts. Okay, so supposing if the entire contract was one contract, then the total contract value you have to consider. And that's the reason we have two separate limits here in this section, the contract value also and per annum limit also. Okay, now see, different date payment has been there. Now first of all, I will check the contract limit. Okay, for the classwork purpose. In fact, you have to check both the limits simultaneously only, but for the classwork purpose. Okay, so our contract limit is 30,000. Okay, so in the first situation, you are not crossing limit. Second, you are not crossing. Third, also you are not crossing. 30,000 is the limit. Not crossing, you are not crossing. Okay, not crossing the contract limit. Okay, now see the per annum limit. That means your aggregate payment. So first it is 13,000. Then 13 plus 16 becomes 29,000. That on the June 6, when you are making the payment, your per annum total figure is going to be 29,000, like that, no? Then you will pay 20, so it is going to be 49. Then you will pay 2, this is going to become 51. Then you will pay 25, it will become 76,000. So even the per annum limit, you are not crossing in this particular situation. Okay, so that is the first analysis. Thereafter, see the further part of the question. X Limited claims that it is not liable to deduct the tax at source under section 194C for the reason that the material for the execution of the said contract have been provided by A Limited to Y Limited. Okay, and A Limited is an associate of X Limited. Okay, now this particular point also I will discuss to you, but wait for a while. Okay, first of all, who is providing that particular material and all that? See, X Limited made the payment to Y Limited. So Y Limited is executing the work. Okay, when Y Limited is executing the work, the material, okay, if it is provided by X Limited, okay, or any of the associated enterprise, then it will be regarded as a work. So for example, supposing if I'm a printer, okay, and I get the material from my customer and I'm doing the work on that, that means I'm doing a work contract, the labor contract. Is that very much clear? This is what it is trying to say. Okay, then it is a work contract. But if the material is not provided by the same X Limited or any of its associated enterprise, that means it is outside, or you can say probably Y Limited is using its own material, then it is not a work contract by the general understanding. Nowadays law makes it very clear on this particular front. Okay, so that is a point which this particular sentence is trying to tell you, and let us examine that. X Limited is not liable for TDS. This is what it is claiming, for the reason that material for the execution of said contract has been provided by A Limited to Y Limited, and A Limited is an associate of X Limited. That means A and X is associated and they are giving material to Y. So since they are giving material to Y, it is a work contract. That's a conclusion. Since A is an associated of X and they are giving material to Y, it is a work contract and it will be subjected to the TDS. However, in the given example, you are not crossing the amounts only. Since you are not crossing the amounts only, the TDS provisions will not be applicable. Okay, in the first part of the question. Okay, now see the second part. Will your answer be different if on 16th of October, you are making another payment of 25,100? My God. So now if you are making another payment of 25,100, then anyway the contract value are not going to cross the limit, but now per annum limit that you are going to cross. Okay. So how much is going to be your per annum? This is going to be 1,01,100. Okay. Now you are already crossing the limit 1 lakh rupees, which is your per annum limit. So now you have to deduct the tax at source. Listen very carefully. Now because of this particular fact which is given to us, it is already a work contract because material is supplied by the X Limited or associated of X Limited. Okay, so it is a work contract. So that condition is satisfied. Now you're crossing the per annum limit. So you have to deduct the tax at source. Now see the fun here. You have to pay only 25,100. You have to pay how much? Only 25,100. From the 25,100, you will deduct the tax at source. But the TDS will be calculated on the entire figure. I repeat, the TDS will be calculated on the entire figure. So on 1,100 multiplied by, see the payee is a company, that means not individual or an HUF, and therefore the rate is going to be 2%. Okay, and accordingly the tax has to be deducted and the net payment you will have to make it accordingly. I repeat, no doubt that the TDS now has to be deducted. That is point number 1, and point number 2 is the tax has to be deducted from the entire value because now you have crossed that particular per annum limit, but you will deduct from the gross payment at that point in time 25,100. Okay, and accordingly you have to make the net payment to the payee. Okay, now one of the thing which I just want to bring it to your notice from the Barrett is the meaning of that particular work contract. 1 second. Okay, because that part of, see this meaning of the word work for the purpose of this particular section. What is a work contract? Keep that in mind. This is one of the fundamental mistakes that oftenly students will do. A work contract is basically a labor contract type situation. But in a labor contract, sometimes the material also gets included. Okay. But the essence of the contract, I repeat, is a labor contract. However, some of the specific contracts are specifically included as a work contract. So advertisement, broadcasting, carriage of goods, catering, all these contracts are the specific contracts which are included in the work contract. Further, work contract will also include any manufacturing or supplying of a product according to the requirement, okay, using the material purchased from such customer or its associate. So if your customer is only providing the material or any of the associate is providing you the material, okay, so in our case it was a contract between X and Y. A was the associate. Okay, so if either X is providing the material or A is providing the material, okay, it will be regarded as a work. Have you understood that? So this is the essence of this particular clarification. Okay. However, if it is material is purchased from a person other than such customer or an associated enterprise, then these particular provisions will not be applicable. Okay, where it is to the requirement of the specification of the customer. But so say for example, if it's a contract between X and Y, but the material is coming from the outside source, okay, not from X, okay, then it cannot be regarded as a work contract in this particular situation. Okay, so you have to keep it in your mind, this particular point, very, very carefully and very, very importantly. Okay, let's go to the next question. Question number 2. Why Limited, why an individual whose total sales in the business during the preceding year ending 31st March was 5.2 crores, paid 9 lakh rupees by check on January 1 to a contractor for construction of his business premises in full and final settlement. No amount was credited earlier to the account of the contractor in the books of Y. Now, one thing I want to bring, this is a new concept in fact, and I want you all guys to pay a little bit extra attention on this particular front. Okay. Now see, this is a situation where an individual, Mr. Y, is making the payment. This is a payment to someone else to whom the payment is made cross the limit on January to the contractor, okay, for the construction of the premises. Now let me assume that contractor is Mr. only, that means individual. See, because that data is not given to us. Now, if the payer, listen very carefully, if the payer is an individual or an HUF, I repeat, if the payer is an individual or an HUF, then there is an extra condition applicable in the variety of the sections. Okay, so now the TDS provisions will apply only if this extra condition is satisfied, where the payer is an individual or an HUF, or in some of the sections AOP BOI is also. So major thing, individual HUF. Okay, and see that particular condition very, very importantly. Okay, and in many sections, but now I will not repeat everywhere that particular section, all the sections, because you have to, moment you will turn these particular tables, not automatically you will get, but tables are in the same format. So payer, if individual HUF, AOP BOI in the given particular section, in the preceding financial year, if your turnover, if you are a businessman, turnover crosses 1 crore rupees, or a profession where your turnover crosses 50 lakhs of rupees, okay, only then you will have to do the TDS compliance. So the payer, individual or an HUF, in general, line like this is a duplicate condition in many sections. This is a duplicate. Say here also, you will see many such places. Okay, so wherever the payers, individuals or an HUF, by and large, friends, you will see it's a duplicate condition in many sections. So I will say like that for the sake of simplicity, that only if you are a big individual, big means of course, yeah, your turnover is more, so you are big. No, so if you are a big individual, okay, then you will have to comply with the TDS provisions and not otherwise. Okay, now that data I think is already there in the question. During the preceding financial year, see, during the preceding financial year. Okay, so that turnover criteria is only during the preceding financial year. Okay. So during the preceding financial, that means a year before that particular year of TDS, that means the previous year, were 5.2 crores. So this is already crossing the limit. Okay, and therefore the TDS compliance you will have to do. Okay, now 9 lakhs is paid for the construction of a business premises. Okay, so you already know. Now see who is the contractor and accordingly deduct the tax at source. So these 9 lakhs rupees will be subjected to the TDS provisions here. Okay, that's all. Now supposing if this was not a business premises, and instead supposing if it was his residential premises, that means Mr. Y is constructing a house for himself and for which he is making this particular payment. In that case there will be no TDS. Why? Because it would be a transaction amounting to for its personal purposes. Is that clear? And therefore the TDS provisions in that situation will not be applicable if instead of a business premises, if it was a residential premises. Now come to this particular topic, casual incomes. Now friends, for the casual income there are two separate sections, but they're almost similar in nature. Lottery winning, crossword puzzle, card games, games of any other sort, and another section for the horse races. Okay, so two separate section, and that way application wise both of them are almost the same. And this particular provisions, first of all keep this particular page open, 194B and BB. Okay, these are all casual income types. The basic limit is same in both the section, tax rate is also the same in both the sections. Okay, now come to this particular question number 1. S wins a motor car in a lucky draw held by P Marketing. The market price of the car is 4 lakh rupees. The P Marketing erroneously gives the car to S without deducting the tax at source. Examine the liability of P Marketing to make such payment, if any. Now see, lottery winning, crossword puzzle, card games, games of any other sort. Okay, so the winning when it comes to the games of any other sort. Okay, when this is a lucky draw. This is a lucky draw. The first question that comes into picture, whether this is kind of the winning that we are trying to refer to. Okay, so basically that particular view is very, very debated. Okay, and there are a lot of judgments on that particular front. See the language of the law, that person responsible for paying any sum by way of winning from lottery, okay, crossword puzzle, okay, card games and other games of any sort. Other games of any sort. Now this is really a tricky language. Other games of any sort. Now say for example a TV show game. Okay, in the TV show game, it will come into this particular picture. For example, Kaun Banega Karodpati. So that particular show will also come in this. It is a game. It is one kind of a game. Okay, it is a game of any other sort. So it will come in this particular category. However, this question is even more difficult to answer. That this is a lucky draw held by P Marketing Company. So this P Marketing Company is actually not playing any games here. They are not playing any games, but they call it as a lucky draw. So what kind of a lucky draw is this, and what kind of marketing that these guys are doing, and whether these guys will actually come under section 194B category or not, itself is a $1 million question. And various court cases are on this particular issue, and still the issue I think is not very much clear. So I'm not going into the details, but see, this is a lucky draw. So this lucky draw must be based on some sort of a marketing trick. Okay, so that might be involving some sort of a game, because the games of any other sort. This is how it is saying. Okay, and therefore I will say that 194B will be applicable. However, I'm not very much satisfied with this particular view, but maximum textbooks, author, material, everybody follow that particular view. So I'm also following that particular view. Okay, so now there is a winning. Okay, so there is a payment on account of a car. Now second point here is that it is not paid in cash. Second point, that it is not paid in cash. What is paid is in form of a motor car. That means the winning, if any, it is in form of a kind. Okay, it is in form of kind. So if there is a kind payment, how are you going to deduct the tax at source? Okay, so that is another practical problem. However, if there is any such payment which is to be made in kind, then there is a one extra provision which I would like to bring to your notice, and it is very, very simple provision, but you should not forget that, and you should better know that. Okay, where there is any winnings, okay, which are in kind or partly in cash, partly in kind. Okay, so any such transactions which are of the winning which is paid in kind, okay, in that particular case they have to ensure that the tax has been paid on that particular winning. So this is one of the condition. So if you are, say for example, paying car, that means you are making a payment in form of a kind whose value is supposing 4 lakhs. Okay, so 30% tax comes. Okay, so that comes to 1,20,000. Okay, so you have to tell the receiver of the car, listen very carefully, you will have to tell the receiver of the car, okay, that you pay this much of tax. That means you this particular company, in our example, supposing company S wins a motor car from P Marketing. Okay, so what P Marketing should do, P Marketing should tell this gentleman S that you want the car. No, so you pay me first of all 1,20,000 rupees. That is your tax. And this 1,20,000 I'm going to give you credit also. It's not that I'm going to chow your money. Okay, so I am going to give you a credit also for that particular money. Okay, but you have to pay me separately. Okay, so you have to ensure that the payment of taxes have been made. Okay, or else you tell that gentleman, Mr. S, and tell him that you pay your tax first of all 1,20,000 if you don't want to give me. Basically, you have to ensure that there is no loss of revenue to the government. This small little exercise you have to do between the payer and the payee. Okay, so that the transaction can be implemented. Okay, now if you do not ensure the payment of tax, then you should not release the car also. That means till then you should hold the car with yourself. You should not give the car. That's a law. Okay, now what happens is this. Now P Marketing erroneously already gives the car to S without deducting the tax at source. They have already paid the money. That is, they have already given the car. So what we will have to do is that these 4 lakh rupees is, we will have to consider it as a net of tax payment, and then we have to gross it up. Simple. Then we will have to gross it up, okay? And you have to ask this P marketing to pay that much amount of the taxes, okay? So 2 alternatives would have been possible, but here they have already paid the money, and therefore these P marketing will have to gross up the figures and accordingly pay the higher amount of the TDS to the government, because TDS is always the income received. Come to this particular question, part F, non-resident sports person. Very simple transaction. Calculate the amount of tax to be deducted at source, TDS, on the payment made to Ricky Ponting, an Australian cricketer, by newspaper for contribution of article rupees 25,000. Now friends, let me tell you that because generally this comes into international taxation more of, so I don't go into the much more greater depth, but only thing, the message which I want to give here is, since it is a payment made to a specified non-resident, non-citizen sports person, okay, where there is a special tax rate provided, so we will deduct the tax at source. But for this payment, because it is to the non-resident or to the foreign company, here it is to a non-resident, plus the applicable surcharge and plus the applicable cess. That is one of the difference when it comes to the tax liability, TDS liability calculation in this particular front. Okay, so and the appropriate section is here in the simplified version, that 194E provision, any payments referred to under 115 BBA, non-resident, non-citizen sports person, okay, or an association for participating into any games, advertisement, or contributing any articles to the media. So these are eligible type of transactions in this particular situation. Technical things I am not doing it. It is all the transactions referred to under section 115 BBA. So this is your tax rate. But here, because it is a payment to non-resident or to a foreign company, in the given case it is non-resident, okay, so it will be TDS plus the applicable surcharge, okay, applicable surcharge and the applicable cess, okay. Now since it is just 25,000, the surcharge, because surcharge it has to come into that particular slab category, okay. So supposing if instead of only 25,000 rupees, supposing if I assume some very high number, 1 crore 25 lakhs, say for example, okay, then I will have to add extra surcharge and extra cess. So that much TDS burden will increase on this particular front. Now friends, come to this particular part, TDS on rent or some property related transactions. Okay, now see, first of all I want you guys to understand hardcore basic. Little bit extra attention is required on this particular front. Okay, now first of all I'll focus on this particular TDS on rent. Okay, come to this particular page and make a observation very properly, and if you want you can make a note. Okay, where any person, okay, making a payment of rent, what is a rent that is defined under the law? So that definition also I would like to share it with you, because there's a likely chance that somebody will do that conceptual mistake, that what is a rent first of all. Okay, and if the pair is an individual and an HUF, I always call it as a big individual or an HUF whose turnover in the preceding financial year exceeds a limit. Okay, so that will come into picture. Okay, the first thing, the rent, you have a basic limit and you have the TDS rate. Okay, now first of all friends, I want you all guys to know what is this particular rent for this particular purpose. Okay, so there conceptual mistakes are possible by the students. Okay, the rent is already defined under the law. See, the rent means the payment by whatever name called for lease, sublease, tenancy, or any other agreement or arrangement for the use of either separately together any land, building, machinery, plant, equipment, furniture, fittings, everything. So it is a rent of practically immobile property, land, building, plant and machinery, furniture and fixture. All the types of rents are covered in this particular category, subjected to the basic limit which is provided by the section itself. So what is provided by the section, it is provided, no, so that is not a problem. Okay, so this is first of all the meaning of the rent. The second thing friends, imagine a situation for some people who are not covered by this particular section. For example, the salaried person. Okay, a salaried person, say for example Mr. X, okay, he has taken one premises on a rental basis. So he is an individual and he does not have any business, so he will not have any turnover in the preceding year. He is not a professional, so he will not have a separate turnover in the preceding year. So this salaried person will not be covered by section 194I. So for these type of people who are paying rent, for them there is another section, okay, called as 194IB, where those individuals or an HUF who are not covered by section 194I. So those people who are paying rent, okay, but they are not covered by 194I. Example, the best example is the salaried person, okay, who is not covered by 194I, will now be covered by 194IB, the payment of rent, of course, subjected to the basic limit. Okay, now the limit which is provided in both the sections are also different. I repeat, 194I limit is different, IB limit is different. There also a lot of mistakes are possible, so mark this point as very important. 194I, the limit is 2,40,000 rupees per annum. I repeat, the limit is per annum. Okay, and under 194IB, the limit is 50,000 rupees per month. It is per month, and therefore it can make a difference in terms of the calculation very much precisely. Okay, so mark this particular point. When I solve the question, I'll repeat this particular point, but one place it is per annum limit, other place it is per month limit. Okay, secondly friends, see the TDS rate which is provided under section 194I, and that particular rate is, if it is for plant and machinery rent, it is 2%, otherwise it is 10% for the immobile property. Okay, so a different TDS rate for the different nature of payment. But in order to consider the 2,40,000 limit, for example, you have to consider the total rent only. Okay, so there is a possibility that you may have say for example 2 lakh rupees for plant and machinery, 1 lakh rupees for land and building. Okay, so you have 3 lakh rupees. So 3 lakh rupees is crossing 2 lakh 40,000 rupees limit. So you will say TDS will applicable. Okay, applicable, but the TDS will be deducted at the respective rates. That is a caution that one has to be very clear, because here the TDS rate is with respect to every category of income. Okay, now let us try this question very precisely. Okay, M Limited has taken 3,000 square feet on a rent from Y Limited to set up its branch office. A rent payable to Y Limited for a flat is 60,000 per month. So it is given to us per month plus the applicable GST. M Limited wishes to know whether tax is required to be deducted under 194I from the gross amount of rent, including GST. Make it as GST and give your advice. Okay. Now, first thing, there is no TDS on the GST figure. Keep that in mind. Where the clear invoice with GST breakup is available. I repeat, where the clear invoice with GST figures are available, no question of any deduction of tax at source on the GST numbers. Okay. Now this is a company, listen very carefully, making payment to another company. It is 60,000 rupees per month. So how many months that it is already paying? I think it is for the entire year, because that exact number of months have not been given to us. So the payment is 7,20,000. Okay, so it is already crossing the limit. Therefore, the TDS provisions will be applicable in this particular situation. Now, but you don't have to deduct the tax on the GST portion whatsoever. So TDS will be applicable. Question number 2. Okay. Question number 2, X Limited took on a sublease. Now see, this is a sublease. I told you the definition of the word rent. So this will also be a part of the rent. X Limited took on a sublease from J, an individual, with effect from 1st September on a rent of 30,000 per month. So 1st September and 30,000. So 1st September means September, October, November, December, January, February, March. So 7 months. 7 into 30. Okay. Per month, sublease of a building. Okay. It also took on hire machinery from J with effect from 1st October. So 1st October means only it will be 6 months. Okay. So 6 months on a higher charges of 9,000 per month. Okay. So this is your 2,10,000 multiplication. 6 multiplied by 9 is 54,000. So your per annum limit, your per annum limit is going to cross. So 2,10,000 plus 54,000. This is your annual payment. Into it is, they are two separate agreements. So they have styled two separate agreements, but that doesn't matter from the TDS, because it is after all X Limited is paying to J. So it's a transaction between payer and the pay. Two separate agreement will not make the difference in this particular situation. Okay. Two separate agreement with J for the sublease of the building and the hiring of the machinery. The rent of the building, hire charges of the machinery for the year was credited by X Limited on account of J in the books on 31st of March. Okay, so that is fair enough. It is already credited. Examine the obligation of X Limited deducted tax at source in the given situation. So you will have to deduct the tax at source, but for plant and machinery, whatever, the rate is going to be 2%, and this on the premises it is going to be 10%. So accordingly, the TDS rate has to be multiplied. So TDS provisions are applicable in this situation. Now come to this particular question, question number 3. X, an individual, let out his building on a monthly rent of 12,000. Tenant deducted the tax under section 194I from rent paid to X, but did not remit such tax to the credit of the central government. X filed his return of income for the year, including the rental incomes from the said building, and paid the balance tax on his total income after taking credit of the tax deducted at source by the tenant. Assessing officer is called upon the X to pay a tax to the extent tax deducted at source. Is assessing officer justified in so doing? Now friends, first of all, this is a very conceptual kind of a situation. First of all, the monthly rent is 12,000. So 12 into 12 is only 1,44,000 rupees, which is less than the limit, first of all. So in any situation, there is no question of any TDS ever coming into picture. Okay, so he has let out his premises. The tenant is another person. Tenant deducted the source. Okay, now actually the fact is that he should have not deducted the source only, but he did it. So that is first thing. So that means from 1,44,000 rupees, my tax has already gone. Actually, there was no TDS. Okay. Now what happens is that he did not remit the money to the government also. He did not pay the money to the government also. So what government is saying that we will not give you the credit because we have not received the money. Okay. So now this gentleman will be in a deep trouble. Why? Because first of all his tax got deducted. So he is not able to recover that much of money. Okay. And secondly, the government is asking the same amount of tax again from his own pocket. So it's all because of this TDS issue only that he lost the money, plus again the same amount of tax which he has to pay to the government on this particular front. Okay, so this is a very practical problem. Okay, sometimes this kind of rare situation also does come into picture. So we have to give the answer like that once the tax is deducted, whether that person has paid the money to the government or not paid the money, my assessee, who is Mr. X, he should get the credit. So the credit should be available. Although the tax was not required to be deducted, but the fact is that actually it is deducted. So the proper compliance of the law should be done, and I should get the credit for that particular money when it comes to my tax liability calculation. So is assessing officer justified in so doing? Now, the assessing officer is not justified in so doing. The next question. X Air Limited has paid a sum of rupees 12 lakhs during the year to the Airport Authority of India towards the landing parking charges. Is the company required to deduct the tax at source from such payment? If so, what is the rate of TDS? Okay. Now here in this particular case, first of all, see the Airport Authority of India is charging some landing parking charges, and a company, which is an airline company, is paying these particular charges to the Airport Authority of India. Okay, that is very much fair enough. But can we say that this is a payment of rent? First of all, see, we are saying no that the plane will be landing, so it will be land on the land only. No, it is not going to land in the air. So it is going to land on the land only. So it is for the use of immovable property, something like that. Okay, see, this is the definition here, which is very much debatable in such a situation. See, what does the law say is that any payment by whatever name called, okay, for the use of land, building, and etc. by whatever name called. So whatever name you give to the transaction, but if it is for the use of the land or the building, that will be categorized as rent. So this became very, very debated point, that because you are using the land, no airport land, because your flight is going to land, and so you call it as a rental income. And accordingly, if the amount cross the limit, the basic limit of the section will remain as it is. But the Supreme Court has decided, I repeat, the Supreme Court has decided that this is not in the nature of rent. This is not in the nature of rent. In other words, it is a separate composite services for which such payments have been made. So you cannot identify this particular transaction as a rental charges. Okay, and therefore the rent provision should not be applicable. However, now the judgment is over. However, we can say that there is a work contract. We can say that there is a contract, a work contract, because it is something sort of a services which are given by the airport authority to that particular company. And we can say that 194C provision will be applicable, and accordingly the TDS provisions will apply. So that's a view. However, the Supreme Court has clarified that it cannot be identified as a rental payment for the use of land. Just because there is some land which you can see that is not for the use of the land. This is what the Supreme Court has clarified. The next point, next question. Mr. X, a salaried individual, pays 55,000 rupees per month rent to Mr. Y from the month of June. From the month of June, that means 10 months, okay, for the year, is required to deduct at the source to also compute the income of amount of tax to be deducted at source. What would your answer be if Mr. X vacated the premises on 31st of December? If he vacated on 31st of December, it will be like June, July, August, September, October, November, December. So it's going to be 7 months. Okay, and what would be your answer if Y does not provide a PAN number to Mr. X? Okay, now first of all, he is a salaried employee, and therefore 194I provisions will not be applicable to him because he is an individual. Okay, so he doesn't have this particular turnover only, no. He's a salaried person, so no question of any business turnover coming into picture, and therefore he will be covered by 194B provision. Now IB provision, sorry. In this particular case, now the limit which is provided is 50,000 rupees per month, and in the given question what is given is 55,000 rupees per month. Okay, and therefore he will have to deduct the tax at source, and he is paying on account of rent only, and therefore the TDS provisions will be applicable. So in the first case it was 10 months. Okay, so multiplied with the appropriate rate and get the amount of the TDS. That will be in the first situation. Now let's see the second situation. If he vacated the premises on 31st of December, then it will be for the 7 months. Okay, fair enough. So you will multiply with the 7 months and get that particular answer. The third point, what would be your answer if Mr. Y does not provide the PAN number to Mr. X? Now remember, there is one section 206 AA provision. Okay, it says that if any person, the payee, does not provide a PAN number, to the payer, okay, does not provide a PAN number to the payer, then whatever is the applicable rate or 20%, whichever is higher. Okay, the applicable rate of the section or 20%, whichever is higher, is a special tax TDS has to be done out of that particular transaction. So if there is no PAN number is not provided. Okay, so in that situation, our normal rate was how much here? I think it was 5%. Let me just check. Okay, here it was 5%. So if you do not provide a PAN number, then it is going to become 20% TDS rate, and accordingly the tax will be deducted. Okay, so update your answer fully. Now come to this particular part, part H, property transaction. Friends, this particular part is about sale purchase of property. Okay, so where there is any sale purchase of property, then this particular clause and this particular section will come into picture. Okay, or if there is any compulsory acquisition of the property. There are two sections together that we got to study. One is sale purchase of the property, other is a compulsory acquisition of a property. So that way every section will have some basic limit and tax rate, a TDS rate. So accordingly that we will multiply. So that will not be a problem at all. Here one complication which can arise to a student is when it comes to the agricultural land. Okay, so make this particular general note first of all very precisely. Agricultural land can be urban, it can be rural. Okay, listen very carefully. Agricultural land can be urban or it can be rural. Okay, a rural agricultural land is not taxable at all. Reason being that as per the capital asset definition in the capital gains chapter, a rural agricultural land is not a capital asset. So urban agricultural land is something what is taxable. So normally friends, the TDS will be applicable only on that portion of a transaction which is taxable. That is the general logic of the TDS. So if there is any income which is exempt, the law doesn't say that you deduct tax on that exempt income also. So that's a logic of the law. Okay. So agricultural land can be of two types, urban, rural. Rural agricultural land by default is not taxable. Okay. In general, I am just telling you. Okay. If there is any transaction. Now, if there is any compulsory acquisition, listen very carefully. If there is any compulsory acquisition, then the compulsory acquisition of a urban agricultural land is also not taxable. A compulsory acquisition of a urban agricultural land is also not taxable. That is exempt under section 10 specifically. So even if there was a urban agricultural land, but if it was compulsorily acquired, then it will not be taxable whatsoever. But a urban agricultural land, if it is normally sold, just like a purchase sale transaction, then the urban land is only taxable. So make this particular point very clear in your book. Okay. And remember that this particular point, logically friends, the TDS will be applicable only when the urban agricultural land is sold. Okay. And if the urban agricultural land is compulsorily acquired, then there will be no TDS because it is not a taxable transaction. Otherwise, these particular sections are going to be very, very simple, because this agricultural land will only create a problem for the students, as I believe. Okay. So open this particular page also. See 194, 194, this one. IA, section IA and section LA. Okay. So this is immobile property and LA provision is for the compulsory acquisition. Limit you can already see under IA it is 50 lakh rupees per property, and under compulsory acquisition it is 2,50,000 per annum. It is a per year limit. Okay. And accordingly the TDS provisions and the rate is to be applied. Okay. Now property transaction. Okay. Now one more thing before I just go ahead. Actually I think it is not going to come in our way into the question, but I will like to bring to your notice that, see, when you say the sale price of a property or a sale consideration of the property and all that. So consideration for the transfer of the property, its meaning, you please understand that it includes all the charges which is in nature of club membership fees, car parking fees, electricity, water facility fee, maintenance fee, whatever. So your consideration for the transfer of the property will be a total of everything if it is incidental to the transfer of the immovable property. So if your property agreement, when you are signing that agreement for the sale of that particular property, and if that agreement gives you all this breakup, that X amount for club membership fees, X amount for parking and all that, so the property consideration will be total. So basically, logically I am telling you that, see the agreement, and in the agreement whatever is written and whatever considerations are written in the agreement, it is all total with respect to the property in this particular situation. Okay. Come to the question number 1. X sold house property at Bangalore as well as his rural agricultural land for consideration of rupees 60 lakhs and 75 lakhs respectively to Mr. Y. Now on 1st of August, he has purchased the house property and land for 40 lakhs and 10 lakhs respectively. The stamp duty value on the date of transfer is 85.20 lakhs for the house property, the rural agricultural land respectively. Discuss the TDS treatment assuming that they are resident in India. Okay. So now first of all, see, property at Bangalore, this will have a TDS compliance subject to that basic limit and all that. This is a normal sale transaction, so that compulsory acquisition is not there. So forget about compulsory acquisition in the question. the rural agricultural land is transacted. Okay, so rural agricultural land, there will be no question of any TDS. Okay, that point also I would like to bring it very much clearer to you. See this 194 IA provision. Okay, consideration for the transfer of immovable property will be covered other than the agricultural land. Okay, and this agricultural land is defined here, that agricultural land not being a land situated in area referred to this, that means not being a rural agricultural land. This is area defined under this particular clause is a rural agricultural land. Okay, so not being that, that means this is a urban agricultural land. Logically, if you want to say, this is a urban agricultural land on which, subjected to the basic limit, if there is any transaction, then the TDS provisions will be applicable. So the rural agricultural land, it is already printed here, so there is no TDS. Now property at Bangalore. Okay, now what is given to us is a selling price, what is given to us is a cost, and what is already given to us is a stamp duty value. All the three things is clearly printed in the question. Now remember, the TDS will always be on the gross figure. The TDS will always be on the gross figure, not on the profit, that means selling price minus cost. Not like that. TDS is always, because the seller and buyer, I am doing transaction of the sale price. I as a buyer, because I as a buyer of the property will have to do the TDS compliance. I will not know what is your cost. See, this question has already printed this, so I already know that. But in real life, you will never know what is his cost. And even if you know, you will not trust it, that is the only cost, because cost can sometimes be debated also. Okay, so seller and buyer, the transaction value, whatever it is, that is logically the selling price, on that the TDS will come. And secondly, the stamp duty value is not at all relevant from the TDS point of view. I repeat, the stamp duty value is not at all relevant from the TDS point of view. And accordingly, you see, now property at Bangalore has been sold for how much? For a consideration of 60 lakhs. Okay, this is for a consideration of 60 lakhs. Property at Bangalore. So 60 lakhs is more than the basic limit of 50 lakhs which is provided, and therefore on that the entire 60 lakhs, because you are crossing the limit, you multiply with the rate of the TDS and get the TDS. Okay, so that will be the end of that particular question. Now question number 2. X, a resident, acquires a house property at Mumbai for from Y, consideration of 90 lakhs. So house property at Mumbai. Okay, so that is 90 lakhs. On the same day, he makes two separate transactions, hereby acquiring a urban plot in Kolkata from C and for sum of 49,50,000, and the rural agricultural land from D for a consideration of 60 lakhs. Okay, what would your answer be different in case house property has been purchased on April 30th? Okay, so this purchase of this particular house property on April 30th could have changed or maybe long-term, short-term status or something like that. But that will not matter from the TDS point of view. So from TDS point of view, whether it is long-term, short-term and all that, nothing doing. Okay. Now, first of all, X acquires a house property from Y. So X is a purchaser. Okay. So X will have to do the TDS compliances. Okay. X will have to do the TDS compliances from Y for consideration of 90 lakhs. Okay, so for 90 lakhs, because it is anyway more than the limit, so the TDS provisions will be applicable. Okay, then second transaction, on the same day, X makes two separate transactions, hereby acquiring. So further is acquiring a urban plot in Kolkata. So urban plot. Okay, urban plot in Kolkata for 49,50,000. So it is per property. Okay, so this 49.5 lakhs, it is that was subjected to TDS, but it is less than the limit. And since it is less than the limit, there will be no TDS on that. No TDS transaction will have to be carried out. Okay, then a rural agricultural land. He is purchasing a rural agricultural land. Okay, since it is a rural agricultural land for 60 lakhs, but it is a rural agricultural land, that's the reason on 60 also there will be no TDS, because rural agricultural land is not a taxable transaction. That's a concept. However, law also makes it very clear that on this there is no TDS provisions applicable, and therefore on 90 lakhs I will have to do the TDS compliances. Friends, now come to this professional technical fees. Now here that way again the section is very simple, but few things, not few things, but one technical thing which I want you guys to be very, very precise in this particular situation. First of all, you come to this particular page where 194J. See, 194J, first of all, we normally call it as a professional fees, but it is not just professional fees, but it is also some other types of transactions. So it is basically the mix of transactions. Okay. Professional fees is one of it. Okay. So these are all different types of transactions which are covered here. Is that clear? Secondly, the limit here which is given to you is a 30,000 limit, which is with respect to each of the type of transactions. So for example, if you are paying professional fees per annum to someone, then there is a 30,000 rupees separate limit. But if you are paying a technical fees, so under the head technical fees, there is a separate limit. Okay. So with the here the limit which is with respect to each of the above item, and with respect to the director's sitting fees, director's remuneration. Okay. This particular one, there is no basic limit which is provided in this particular situation. And the TDS rate also, it is a different rate for different types of income. Only thing that if it is in relation to some specified types of income, it is 2% tax rate, then a TDS rate, and otherwise it is 10% TDS rate in this particular circumstances. Okay. Now, before I go to the question, I also want to refer to the BAREC for your better understanding. Okay. That see, under 194J provision, all these different types of fees are covered, or transaction for the which the list I have already given it to you. Okay. And for each and every type of a transaction, if you see, there is a separate limit which is provided. So no deduction shall be made where the amount or such amount as the aggregate of this particular figure does not exceed 30,000 rupees if it is in relation to clause A. So this clause A, the limit for the TDS is 30,000 for clause A. Okay. Similarly for clause B, C, in relation to clause B, the limit is 30,000 rupees, like this. Okay. And that is the interpretation, that with respect to all different clauses, it is a different limit. And when it comes to the remuneration of the director of a company, there is no limit. That means there is no basic limit. That means a director's remuneration, if a company pays, then straight away you have to deduct the tax at source. This is what the conclusion is, because the limit is only for A, B, C and D. Okay. So for this BA category, there is no limit. See, A, B, C and D, there is a limit. But for BA, there is no limit which is already provided. And that is a little bit of a technical interpretation, and that brings us to the conclusion that for BAC there is no limit. Okay. So for ABCD there is a limit, basic limit, which is already been provided under this particular provisions. Okay. Now come to the question. East Bengal Club, a renowned football club, engaged a resident in India coach at a remuneration of 6 lakhs annually. The club wants to know whether there is liable to deduct the tax at source. Yes, because the coach is a professional. Okay. So professional technical fees 194J provisions will be applicable. So here particularly the professional fees, the provisions will be applicable. TDS will apply. So you can just do the multiplication and give the answer. Okay. Now question number 2. Mr. A is credited to the account of HG. Mr. A is crediting in the account credited to the account of the HG in the books of accounts. So Mr. A is paying. Now wherever individual HUF is paying, then in the preceding year the turnover should more than the limit. So that preceding financial year turnover is already given to us in the question. Okay. So that is already crossing the limit. Only then Mr. A will be responsible for TDS obligations. Now he makes the following payment by check. 18,000 towards the fees for professional services. So this is not subjected to any TDS provisions. Okay. 23,000 is towards the fees for technical services. This is also not crossing the limit. Okay. So no question of any TDS ever coming into picture because they are not crossing the limit. Then 31,000 towards the royalty in nature of consideration for the sale, distribution, exhibition of cinematography of films. Now this is crossing the limit, and this royalty in nature of sale, distribution of exhibition of cinematography of films, mark it as important because this is a recent development that for these type income there is a special TDS rate provided, and it is subjected to TDS also. Anyway, you are crossing the limit, and that is one of the things which I want to repeat here. Okay, and that is, see, at the time of credit or at the time of payment, amount equal to 2% in case of fees for technical services. Fees for technical services not being a professional services or a royalty. So technical services or a royalty where the royalty is in nature of consideration for a sale, distribution or exhibition of cinematography of films, then it is 2%. It is equal to the 2%. See, this is 2%. Okay. Otherwise, any other transaction, it is 10%. So for these type, see, this is the nature of transaction. You better keep it in your back memory. Okay. Royalty in nature of consideration of sale, distribution or cinematography of films, the rate is 2%. Okay, and accordingly I am going to apply the TDS rate for this 31,000 transaction, that is 2%. Now one more thing which I want to clarify, that say for example, I will just made one assumption here, that way the answer is over. I'll just make one particular assumption and solve that. However, even in the later classes that kind of example will come, but I think that right now I give. For example, there is a professional fees. Okay, professional fees of supposing 38,000. Professional fees. Suppose now. Okay, suppose I'll just add here 38,000 professional fees. Okay, this is basically to an advocate for his divorce matter. So this Mr. A is undergoing some dispute with his wife, and he is undergoing a divorce. So 38,000 is anyway more than the limit, so you will feel that TDS will be applicable. But the divorce matter is his personal matter. This is a personal affair of this particular gentleman. Okay, and therefore the TDS provisions will not be applicable. So just make a note here. Or in fact, I have already made a note. See, the payment for personal use, there is no question of any TDS. So if there is any transaction for which you are making a payment, but for a personal thing, then there is no question of any TDS coming into picture. Okay, this is the Barrett provision where individual or an HUF making exclusively for personal use. Okay, then there is no question of deduction of tax at source. No individual shall deduct the tax. No individual will have to deduct the tax at source if any such payment is exclusively for the personal purposes.